Welcome to GW Integrative Medicine, the podcast about disease prevention and health promotion from the Office of Integrative Medicine and Health at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences.
I'm Dr. Lee Frame, Director of the Integrative Medicine Programs here at GW.
And I'm Janet Rodriguez, the office's Administrative Director. Today on the pod, we have Anthony Fardet, PhD, a senior research scientist with the French National Institute for Agricultural Research and the author of Stop Ultra-Processed Foods, Let's Eat True.
Dr. Fardet is a leader in preventative nutrition, a science that includes both physiological, behavioral, technological, environmental, economic, social, cultural, and religious dimensions. Preventative nutrition research is a branch of nutrition that consists of producing data to define the best way to nourish oneself in order to live as long as possible in good health, also known as health span.
Since 2010, his work has mainly consisted of analyses of food data using an inductive and holistic approach.
Welcome to GW Integrative Medicine, Anthony.
Thank you for your invitation.
We are really glad to have you. And this is a topic that is very close to my own heart. I talk quite a bit about the food matrix and food processing, and we would love to hear from you, your take on, one, the importance of the food matrix, and then two, how food processing disrupts that and is affecting our health span.
Yes, let's be empirical first. There is a main question to ask, why we have tooth and digestive tract. If we have tooth and digestive tract, this is first to unstructure the food matrices. So food matrices is the result of nutrient interaction, and there is many kind of interaction between nutrients. So this gives the food matrix. For example, an apple is a solid matrix, an apple puree is a semi-solid or viscous matrix, and apple juice is a liquid matrix. So the only fact of having a digestive process is the first empirical proof of the very importance of food matrix. I have a lot to say about this first question. First, I would like to recall and to define what is food health potential. This is a work that we published 4 years ago in the journal Advances in Nutrition. So food health potential today has been mainly described as the sum of the health effect of nutrient, but taken separately, what we call the reductionist approach. This is not sufficient, largely not sufficient. So we have added to this food health potential a more holistic perspective by adding the food matrix. If the nutrient fraction, which is a reductionist and quantitative fraction, is useful, for example, to define nutritional need, to define the food composition, to prevent from deficiencies, etc., the food matrix play also a very important role on human physiology, metabolism, and health on the long term. Food matrix play a role on showing satiety and the regulation of food intake. Food matrix play a role on the speed of digestive transit, on nutrient bioavailability, glycemic index, protein anabolism, lipid metabolism, and the secretion of hormone. And finally, a very important role on the synergy of action of nutrient. Say it differently, an antioxidant is protective, but in synergy with other antioxidants of the food, which can be different molecules. And if you isolate this antioxidant and put it in high amount in a new artificialized or ultra-processed matrix, this is absolutely not the same effect for health. So 2 months ago, we published, according to us, an important paper where we demonstrate, based on scientific evidence, that food matrix govern the health potential of nutrient. So food matrix govern and nutrient obey. So there is no negative and positive nutrient, but there is only good and bad food matrices. And the quality of the food matrices mainly depend on degree of processing, but we can come back to this point later. So we developed the proof of concept that chronic disease worldwide are first due to the excessive degradation and artificialization of food matrices, not on food composition, not on nutrient content. So we have to change paradigm. We were used to define a healthy food as a nutrient, as a balance, as a nutritionally balanced food. But this is false. This is scientifically erroneous because no food are nutritionally balanced except breast milk. Hence, the recommendation to eat varied. We eat varied on a week because all food are nutritionally unbalanced. So what is a healthy food? Based on the most recent and modern science, we can define a healthy food as the less processed one, to have the best matrix quality, to be both edible, safe, and tasty. So we have to change paradigm of the definition of the food health potential if you want to make a good prevention. So matrix quality is the key paradigm for global health, human health, and environment. The consequences of this new definition of food health potential are very important. First, nutrients are not interchangeable from one matrix to another. So 1 gram of fructose from a soda is not the same than 1 gram of fructose from a fruit, a complex fruit. So what matters? What matters is the environmental matrix of the nutrient, the quality of the calorie, the quality of the nutrient. And if we have a good matrix quality, nutrients are regulated, have a good digestive fat, and their metabolism is good for human health. If we have a degraded food matrix, artificialized food matrix, such as in ultra-processed food, the same nutrient may become unhealthy on the long term for human health. So we should not focus on nutrients for preventive nutrition or preventive diet, but we should focus on food matrix quality and degree of processing. This leads me to the role of food processing on the food matrix. I think we have to recall that traditionally humanity was used to use 4 traditional food processes: thermal processes, mechanical processes, fermentative processes, and the addition of culinary ingredient, salt, sugar, or fat, to preserve food on a long term, but at small scale. And after the Second World War, we can see the era of food cracking or food unstructuration through ultra processing. This is similar to petroleum. So we unstructure the food matrix up to the nutrient, up to isolated the elementary units of food. So food unstructuration to the extreme lead to ultra-processed food, hence the word ultra, because the food matrix is completely degraded and unstructured. So what matter is not processing as such. This is a degree of processing. So the question we ask ourselves as scientists is which degree of food processing is compatible with global health, human and environmental health. So this is the word degree which matters. Before the advent of ultra-processing, there was no epidemic of obesity, type 2 diabetic, or hepatic steatosis with traditional food processes such as thermal, mechanical, fermentative processes. There was no epidemic of chronic disease. So the explosion of the prevalence of chronic disease is fully parallel with the advent of ultra processing in the 60s, 70s, and in the 80s in Western country, and now in developing and emerging country. So, what are these markers of ultra processing? There are four markers of ultra processing: a cosmetic additive to modify, exacerbate, or hide a taste, color, and texture. So, this is coloring agent, texturizing agent, and coloring agent or taste modifier. These cosmetic additives are around 80% of all additive at European level. So antioxidant and preservative are not a marker of ultra-processing stricto sensu. The second type of marker of ultra-processing are aroma, synthetic and natural aroma, and aroma extract. This modify the aroma of the food. Generally, we use aroma to exacerbate aroma of the food. This is very profitable. The third type of marker of ultra-processing is what I have called ultra-processed macronutrient, ultra-processed lipid, protein, carbohydrate, and fiber. We can find many of these markers of ultra-processing. This is protein and fiber isolate, protein hydrolysate. This is hydrogenated oil, refined oil, invert sugar, polydextrose, maltodextrin, glucose fructose syrup, malt extract, maltodextrin, starch, etc., etc. So this can contribute to hidden sugar in ready-to-eat, for example, meal. And the last type of marker of ultra-processing are excessive or drastic technological processes directly applied to the food matrix. We know very well puffing and extrusion cooking. So what is the common point of all these markers of ultra-processing? The three first one, you can find them on the packaging. The main common point is that we have isolated, purified, or synthetic compound with no more matrix. And the first type, which are drastic processes, their particularity is to explode the food matrix. So the paradigm that sustain ultra processing is degradation and artificialization of food matrices. And scientific evidence up today clearly show in more than 80 epidemiological studies comparing high consumer versus low consumer of ultra-processed food that these food are associated with with increased and significant risk of chronic disease, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, adiposity, hypertension, total cancer, depression, and early mortality. So we have a first answer to the question, what is the degree of processing which is not compatible with global health? This is ultra processing because it threatens human health, but also food system sustainability because ultra processed food are not associated with sustainable food system. So now to conclude to this first question, once we have separate ultra processed food from non ultra processed food in real food, we can also apply three rules. We have to favor solid versus liquid form. We have to favor whole grain starchy food versus refined starchy food. And we have to be cautious with the addition of free salt, sugar, and or fat. So all these rules are linked to the food matrix because when we add free sugar and fat, the word free means with no matrix. And solid versus liquid form, this is always a matrix effect, and whole grain versus refined starchy food is also the matrix effect. So I will conclude by saying that food matrix is a key concept for preventing from chronic disease, but also for global health, including food system sustainability.
That was very helpful. Thank you. One of the things that I'm glad that you mentioned actually is global health because there are a lot of camps that think that all food processing is bad. And I think global health really puts in perspective that that is not the case, because some food processing can increase nutrition and food availability. But the key is really what you're pointing out, the ultra processed food, where the food matrix has been stripped back. And I think one of the problems people have with ultra processed food is defining it is not always easy. So your definition is extremely helpful. And just thinking of that, stripping the food matrix out allows one to really visualize a ultra processed food versus something you can make in your kitchen, or even something that, you're still purchasing but has only been minimally processed.
Mm.
So now that we know what a food matrix is, and we've talked about food processing, and we understand that the old reductionist approach doesn't really work, how do we move away from that? How do we get away from the reductionist approach to understanding the food matrix and food processing in nutrition science?
Yeah, this is for me a very important question. This is the basis of my work since 10 years, because I begin to work on the reductionist and holistic approach of food and nutrition science in 2011. Because my question was as follow. I didn't understand why prevalence of chronic disease explode worldwide, while we know very much about nutrition science. We have a huge knowledge in nutrition science. And I discovered through the reading of two books, Nutritionism by Georgis Krinis and All by Colin Campbell, that the fundamental issue of our failure to prevent chronic disease was the ultra-reductionist approach or nutritionism or the nutri-centered approach. In other words, we try to characterize the diet human health relationship only by the view of nutrients. But it is an erroneous view, and according to this reductionist and nutri-centered approach, we tend to summarize the food health potential to the sum of the health potential of each nutrient, but taken separately. But this is not true, because in life science, in all life science, 1 plus 1 is never equal to 2. 1 plus 1 is either above 2, this is synergy, or below 2, this is antagonism. But this is never equal to 2. This is the basis of the holistic approach, because in the holistic approach, the interconnectedness of all parts of a system is recognized. All is interdependent, and this interdependency is very important. So when we talk about the food matrix, it is a holistic view of food. We recognize that the food health potential is first due to the link between the nutrient before the nutrient themselves. Nutrients themselves have no real interest if we do not take into consideration the nature of the link which interact between each nutrient. We are used to say that interaction or link are health, links are resilience, link are life. So this is the same in the food health potential. The link between nutrients is fundamental. And in ultra-processed food, we have completely forgotten that first, the link between nutrients is the most important for human health. So we have unstructured food matrices and create fake food or artificialized food. So all complex systems in nature are composed of parts which are linked together. So the reductionist view is interested in studying isolated parts separately, and the holistic view is interested in studying the whole complex system and the link between the parts of a system. So this is my approach as scientist. So once I have discovered this, I have made an important transitivity relationship between nutritionism or ultra-reductionism, ultra-processed food, and chronic disease. So I conclude that this extreme reductionism disconnected from reality have contributed to chronic disease. So we cannot use the same way of thinking to prevent chronic disease than the way of thinking that has contributed to create chronic disease. Yet we are doing this through composition score. We use ultra reductionism in composition score to prevent from chronic disease. This is a fundamental error, and not only composition score will not prevent chronic disease, but probably will worsen the situation, because this is the two sides of the same coin. Composition score and ultra-processed food are both based on ultra-reductionism. So for me, the solution was to come back to the first and essential nature of nutrition, holism. Because if you want diet science, food science, nutrition are first holistic science by essence. So I try to come back to holism and to see the consequences of applying holism or the holistic approach in all the agro food chain, food science, and nutrition. At the level of the food, this led me to consider that this is food matrix, which is linked to health, not nutrient. At the level of diet, complex diet, this led us to conceptualize the 3V rule. In French, this means vrai, végétal, varié. In English, this means real food, vegetable food or plant-based food, and varied food. For us, this is a very important rule because we observed, according to an empirical and inductive approach, that the diet, human health or global health relationship is governed by three dimensions. The first one, which was the missing link and the most important of all dimensions, is the degree of processing. In other words, real, the real rule, real food. The most important because it corresponds to the matrix effect. Then there is a second dimension, which is the plant-animal ratio, that we call vegetal. And the third one is the varied rule, which means food diversity. But while the varied and vegetal rules apply at the level of the week for a complex diet, because the equilibrium in nutrient is at the level of a week, not of a food, the first rule, the real rule for real food, apply at the level of the food and is the most important. This means that it is not only sufficient to tell people to revegetate their plate. If they revegetate their plate with ultra-processed plant-based food, this is no good for global health, human and environmental health. So degree of processing matter and is the most important dimension of the 3V rule. And then we try to apply the holistic perspective to food scoring. So, as you guess, we are against composition score. We think this is not a good tool for public health. So, for us, the NOVA classification, which give the concept of ultra-processed food by Carlos Montero in 1929, is a holistic classification with 4 technological group, but with no quantitative indicator. This is qualitative description of food. NOVA is very holistic. Composition score are very reductionist. So we wanted to develop an intermediate tool combining both holistic and reductionist approach. French scholar Edgar Morin used to say that the real complex thinking is a combination, a balance between holism and reductionism. So with the SIGA score, which is now on a smartphone, which is now developed as a smartphone application, combine NOVA classification, holistic group, with additional and validated scientific rules, which is the matrix effect, the addition of free sugar, fat, and salt, and the number of marker of ultra-processing, which lead us to 7 technological groups. And to conclude on this question, I like to say that this 3V rule can be found in the agri-food chain. The producer, breeder, farmer is a supplier of nutrients for population. This is the first rule of a producer, to supply nutrient to population. But if in the middle of the chain, the food industry produce fake food, ultra-processed food, these nutrients supplied by the producer may not be, maybe not healthful for the consumer. So the transformator in the middle of the chain is very important because it addresses the real rule. So it is important that now food industry take care of food matrix and develop less processed food with better matrix quality. Because you can also address all your nutritional need, but you can become chronically ill. It is largely insufficient to address all your nutritional need. You can prevent deficiency, yes, but not chronic disease. Because if I give you all the day ultra-processed food enriched with micronutrient, trace element, antioxidant, minerals, vitamins, yes, you will fulfill your nutritional need, but I guess on the long term, you become diabetic or obese. So this underlie the importance of the 3V rule, and the first one, the real rule for real food, which means not ultra-processed.
Dr. Fardet, do you have any resources for health professionals and healthcare consumers who wish to learn more about the food matrix?
Yes, this is my research topic since the beginning, since I began to make research 24 years ago. So my PhD was on the food matrix effect of ASTA. So uh, I have a lot of paper about food matrix. First, I can encourage people to have a look at my personal blog on internet, which is mainly in French, but there is also some English materials and translation. I have published in French a collaborative scientific book about the food matrix effect and nutritional effect with 50 researchers from my institute, but this is in France, in French. I have a lot of paper in peer-reviewed journals about the food matrix effect, and our last one was published in January. And in this paper, which is very important for us, we demonstrated based on an empirico-inductive approach that chronic disease are first due to the degradation and artificialization of food matrices. And finally, I have written, but in French, sorry, two popularizing books, one in 2017 and another in 2021. In these two books, I have summarized, I have popularized my works about food matrix, holistic approach, reductionist approach, NOVA classification, SIGA classification, the 3V rule, and I try to explain how we have reached such a level of confusion in the large public. And I think this is already a lot.
Well, thank goodness for Google Translate because those of us who are not French speakers can just use that when we're
Yeah,
looking at your website.
yes, but on my blog I have a lot of English interview about food matrix and ultra processed food that you can listen to. And there is a scientific peer review paper about the food matrix effect by me, but also by other researchers worldwide, because I am not the only researcher to work on food matrix. So there is today a huge scientific evidence and a lot of paper about food matrix, dairy food matrix effect, cereal food matrix effect, fruit food matrix effect, etc., etc.
Well, that all sounds like great resources. What else should we keep our eyes peeled for? What is coming down the pipeline in terms of research that we should be anticipating?
About food matrix, our degree of processing,
Or both?
or both. It's a very difficult question because, generally speaking, we can always continue research about in food
Hmm.
and nutrition science. This is true, but I would like to say that when we come back to a holistic approach, things are going to become very clear, simple, and for example, this empirico-inductive and holistic approach lead us to find the relation between food matrix and chronic disease, the 3V rule, to develop a new food scoring. I think we need more research about the association between ultra-processed food and global health, especially environment. We need to know what is the hidden cost and environmental cost of ultra-processing worldwide. I think it is very important. So today I am coordinating a research project in my institute about food processing and global health and sustainability, because this is a kind of black box. We do not know so much about the role of food industry in sustainability. We focus too much on the producer or consumer, but we have forgotten the actor which is in the middle of the agri-food chain, in other words, agro-food industry. So I think there is a lot of research to study how food processing, notably ultra processing, impact all the dimensions of food system, including environment, greenhouse gas emission, animal well-being. For human health, we need more epidemiological study. For other chronic disease, which has not been so much studied. So for me, the degree of food processing is clearly an emerging science which deserves to be studied largely much more, according to me. This is the most important, and probably we should not lead so many studies about nutrient, isolated nutrient, which are studied in very controlled conditions, but which are very far from the real life and from living condition. So we need more holistic approach, more transversal approach, more interdisciplinary approach of food science and nutrition.
Well, I couldn't agree with that more. And it's definitely an area we will be sure to be aware of as it comes to fruition. It's not going to be easy research, but we certainly do need it.
No, because we are not used of the holistic approach. The holistic approach is coming mainly from how do we say, Eastern country. And the reductionist approach is more from Western country. So we need to combine both approach, and each one will regenerate the other. Holistic approach can regenerate the reductionist approach, and vice versa. So we need to combine both approaches, but always in the good way, from holism to reductionism, from the global to the specific. And I think a researcher need to leave their silo, their thinking in silo, to collaborate with other researchers. Because I repeat myself, but life sciences in general are holistic sciences. The reductionist approach is good. She has supply very important data, and we have to continue. But we have to continue in combination with holistic approach, because if there is no holistic approach, and when reductionism is alone, at a moment it disconnects from the holistic perspective. It disconnects from reality, given virtual food, fake food, or food composition score, which are not adapted to the reality of what we eat. So there is a risk when there is no more holistic approach, is that reductionism turns around itself only for profit, benefit, and for academic career, but not to the benefit of society.
Well, that seems like a great place to end off that conversation. It's all the time we have for today, but thank you so much for joining us, Anthony.
Thank you for your trust. It was a real pleasure.
This is the GW Integrative Medicine podcast from the GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health.
I'm Dr. Lee Frame.
And I'm Janet Rodriguez.
Thanks for listening.
The Office of Integrative Medicine and Health produces the GW Integrative Medicine podcast with funds from your donations. Your generosity allows us to raise awareness of the benefits of integrating whole person care, including evidence-based complementary therapies, into healthcare broadly. Help us continue to grow the podcast by making a tax-deductible donation on our website, smhs.gwu.edu/OIMH. Click the Give Now button on the left. While you're there, sign up for our free monthly newsletter for even more evidence-based content, including free webinars.